For many of us, our next speaker requires very little introduction. The Honourable Jennifer Coate, AO, is a former judge of the Family Court of Australia. She served as a commissioner on the 5-year Royal Commission into Institutional Response to Child Sexual Abuse. Prior to this, she held a number of appointments, including Judge of the County Court of Victoria, State Coroner of Victoria, the inaugural President of the Children's Court of Victoria, Senior Magistrate of the Children's Court of Victoria, Magistrate and Deputy Chief Magistrate of the Magistrates Court of Victoria. Ms. Coate has also worked as a part-time Law Reform Commissioner, a solicitor in private practice, a solicitor for Legal Aid Commission of Victoria, and in policy and research for the Victorian Government. In 2019, she was awarded an Order of Australia and became an Officer of the Order of Australia. In 2020, Ms. Coate was reappointed as a part-time Law Reform Commissioner and Chair of the Victims of Crime Consultative Committee. And in July 2020, Ms. Coate was appointed to conduct an inquiry into Victoria's hotel quarantine program. Over to you, Ms. Coate.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you for that introduction. And more importantly, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak directly to you, the foster carers of Victoria, during Foster Care Week. I too acknowledge the country upon which I am speaking to you from, the beautiful Bunurong country, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and particular respect and acknowledgement to any Aboriginal people online with us today. During my years as the head of the Children's Court of Victoria, I was regularly exposed to the work of foster carers. I've always endeavoured to convey the importance of the work of foster carers at the court, and indeed to the broader system of child protection in Victoria. Quite frankly, the child protection system of Victoria could not function without foster carers. Carers that provide both short-term and long-term care, and of course episodic care as well, for those children in need of care and protection. The work of foster carers, as I've said, is simply fundamental to our system of child protection. You deserve nothing less than a full acknowledgement of this. And as Sam has so eloquently put today, that acknowledgement must be properly supported by the funding needed for you to carry out this role on behalf of children and young people, and indeed our society. The issue of funding to support the commitment made by foster carers deserves more than a cursory glance. This issue has been the subject of much advocacy and lobbying over all of the years that I can remember. In my view, amongst other things, it has been unnecessarily mired, bogged down, and confused with the notion that the work that you do is altruistic and voluntary work, and therefore to, in inverted commas, pay carers changes the nature of that role. I know that much has been written and said about this. I want to say three things, make 3 points today about this issue. First, that the issue of funding should be looked at through the lens of the child. In other words, what does it cost to maintain a child in a caring, thoughtful, and appropriate home that provides the child with all the opportunities that that child needs to join in to the appropriate activities? This assessment must be done in the full knowledge that a number of the children coming into foster care will have special needs, all of which come with a cost on the household, as we've heard already, and I'm simply reinforcing that view. Second, what does the alternative cost? in dollars, in emotional and psychological damage of not maintaining children and young people in appropriate care. And third, what has been the realistic and practical financial, not to mention emotional and psychological burden on children and young people in foster care, and in turn on the foster homes themselves that have to support children and young people in this current pandemic. I'm sure the association is very well placed to address these questions, and quite simply, they must be responded to properly by government on behalf of the children and young people who need these placements in the short term and in the long term. I also want to take this opportunity today to make a point about the importance of foster care to the building of resilience in children. We all know of the importance of resilience in our life's journey. That is, the ability to be able to cope with the range of stressors life is going to throw at most of us at some point along that journey. Many of the children and young people coming into foster care may have already faced considerable trauma and hardship and stressors in their young lives. The research tells us that the factors that enable children to develop resilience are both biological and environmental factors. Supportive relationships with adults and experiencing the warmth and affection of those supportive adults who are prepared to spend time with the child will contribute to the foundations of resilience in that child. In my professional life, I have seen the validity of this research play out time and time again. The child or young person who has felt the nurture and protection of a carer or supportive adult in their lives has often been able to better feel valued and therefore stand a better chance of developing self-esteem, a key component to resilience. I also want to say a word about the capacity of foster care to the building of a trusting relationship with a child, and in turn, the importance of that trusting relationship in the capacity to create a sense of protection for both children and young people. During my 5 years on the Royal Commission, I met in private sessions with hundreds of people who came to tell their personal stories of trauma, heartache, sadness, and abuse as children. For those who were abused in care, a significant proportion spoke about why they had felt unable to tell anyone about what was happening to them. Apart from not understanding what was happening to them, often not having the language to articulate or explain it, and fear of not being believed, high on the list of barriers to reporting was no one to talk to. I had no one to trust. I well remember the account of one young man who spoke of how he summoned up the courage to tell his foster father, after quite a short period in foster care, what was happening to him at school at the hands of a teacher. And the relief he felt was palpable, even some years later, when recounting his experience, after he was reassured by his foster father, he was believed and he would be protected. And indeed, that's what happened. Over my years of involvement in the child protection system, as I said at the outset, I regularly heard foster carers express frustration at the apparent devaluing of their role in children's lives. And This included issues such as what they had to offer by way of evidence as to a child's well-being and indeed what might be a child's best interests. I heard, understood and accepted this frustration. What I did not do, as it was not appropriate, was step out of my professional role at that time and speak of my own family history. Today, in retirement, away from the daily requirements of judging each matter on the evidence before me, it's a different moment for me. I know that the evidence of one, and personal evidence at that, is not validated research, but nevertheless, I'm going to give you some evidence about my own personal experience outside the realm of my professional experience. My own mother was raised in foster care. My mother was relinquished as an infant and placed into an orphanage in 1915 at the age of 3. She was placed with a foster mother who cared for and nurtured my mother into her teenage years. That foster mother was in her early 60s when she took my mother into her care and looked after her and developed her up into the strong, courageous, loving, resilient, compassionate, life-loving woman that was my mother. My mother experienced considerable personal grief, loss, hardship and illness in her life, and yet her capacity to deal with these adversities was simply second to none. I know that the reason my mother was able to feel and show love and empathy was that she experienced that love and reassurance of her worth from her foster mother. She told me so. My mother's strong commitment all her life to our individual and social responsibilities to care for and look after those less fortunate than ourselves was modelled to her by her foster mother. In turn, as the daughter of a mother raised by a foster parent, I reaped the benefit of being brought up by a loving, stable and committed parent. My mother played a vital role in modelling empathy for others to me. Unfortunately, I did not get a chance to meet and know the woman that shaped my mother, as she was long gone by the time I arrived into the world. But had I met her, I would have been able to express my deepest admiration and thanks to her for looking after my mother and raising up the woman that raised me. I did not ever get that opportunity. But today I have the opportunity to say to you as foster carers, I know what you do. I deeply value the work that you do, and I admire with all my heart your commitment to the children and young people that you care for. And thank you for the work you've done, and I know you will continue to do. Thanks, Sam.
Wow, feeling a bit emotional. Probably all need a moment to reflect on what incredible and powerful words they were. I must say what a privilege it has been for you to share your personal journey with us. And it certainly reminds us of the care that we provide today does indeed shape the way that our children become community members across generations. Your personal experience shows that foster carers can instill such a strong work ethic and sense of community, like your own mother demonstrated with her care experience, which went on to inform the way that she parented one of Australia's greatest legal minds. And your highly distinguished legal career has been underpinned always by a passionate commitment to advocating for children and the rights of families, and your humanity and your compassion just always shines through. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you to everybody, and I feel so honoured to have been able to participate in these Foster Care Week acknowledgement and celebrations. And thank you so much to everybody out there for the work that you do. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.